Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll give it just one more minute for more people to join us, and then we'll kick off. But lovely to have you all. Right. Thank you. Just my co-host from the ZamPulse Chats team. Please keep an eye on the waiting room for more guests to join us. So good evening and welcome, everybody. Welcome to ZamPulse Chats, which is an initiative by Ungano Events Management, which is aimed at exploring and expanding the landscape of Zambian entrepreneurship. Our motto is ZamPulse Chats, broadening the scope of Zambian entrepreneurship. Our guest for this episode is Mark Townsend, who is the driving force behind Zambia's most innovative ecotourism ventures. From his early days exploring the wild landscapes of Lusaka, Lower Zambezi, Kafue, and Lake Kariba, to building acclaimed lodges like Winterthorn, Mangolezya Camps, and Raintree Camp, Mark's evolution from wildlife enthusiast to sustainable tourism entrepreneur offers powerful lessons and inspiration to each of us looking to turn passion into purpose, or even better, into profit. So before I bring Mark on, this is the format. Him and I are going to have a chat, and we encourage you that right from the start, right from this moment, if you can, you interact with us in the chat function by posting questions, comments, and sharing your insights. But please, to ensure a positive environment, follow our online etiquette, which is simply be respectful, refrain from inappropriate language, and allow others a space to contribute. Mark's chat with me is going to be about 15 minutes, and then the floor will be yours. We'll take your questions. So today's topic is From Passion to Profit, Charting a Sustainable Tourism Enterprise. Mark, welcome to ZamPulse Chats. So thanks so much for making the time.
No, thank you very much. And good evening to everybody. I hope everyone is doing well.
I would imagine so. Everybody's just come off work and relaxing at home. I can take it. Oh, well, Mark, let's start from the very beginning. Actually, what is Mangolezya? Before I get into the questions, what does that mean?
So Mangolezya is an Ilo word, and it means either good evening or sunset.
Right.
So we wanted something that would speak directly into the experience we want to offer. And I think one of the most beautiful experiences is watching a wonderful Zambian sunset. So that's why we chose the word Mangolezya as our holding name for the company.
Right. Sounds lovely. I can actually see that. So Mangolezya holds everything we're going to be talking about today. It all just flows right back
Yes,
into that. Okay. So could
absolutely.
you share how your own upbringing between Lusaka, the Lower Zambezi, Kafue, and Lake Kariba planted the seeds for your commitment to sustainable tourism?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like any business, you must have a purpose. Without a purpose, it's very difficult to build a sustainable business. And I always tell my mentees that I work with that, the most important thing is you must have a purpose. I'm a conservationist. I'm a very, very staunch conservationist. But I'm a modern and realist conservationist. I'm not a conservationist that doesn't understand the modern challenges that we have with our wildlife environments. And I realized a long time ago that to sustain conservation, we need support. And that support has to come from fellow Zambians.
Right.
And we cannot ask people to conserve something that A, they've never seen, B, they've never experienced, and C, they see absolutely no value in. When the argument or incidents came around mining in the national park, it made me realize how much or how many people don't really understand the true value of what we have in
So
our
maybe
national
for
parks.
context,
And
there are some that may not have understood what you mean. So this was in the Lower Zambezi National Park where the mining.
yeah, so in the Lower Zambezi National Park, there was, and it's still ongoing. There's a wrangling court case, between conservationists and others who want to mine copper in the national park.
Right.
And some would see the mining as a better opportunity for jobs. Those who have not experienced that beautiful location might side with that to say, well, I've never been to a national park, so why should I have an interest? Why should I conserve something I have absolutely no interest in? And I speak to a lot of people, and one of the things they tell me is that going on a safari is expensive.
Right.
It's too expensive for Zambians and citizens of our country, and maybe also residents who reside here, to go on safari. So the people going on the safari will be not from Zambia; they'll be foreign tourists, which is fine. I mean, there's income that we earn from that as a nation, but that doesn't help conservation, because those tourists will come in, they will enjoy the benefit, and they will leave, and maybe they will sign a petition here and there, and maybe send some money, for Save the Rhino. But that's about all they're going to do. So my purpose and my drive is very clear. I want and will develop a series of lodges and camps in very strategic locations that will enable Zambian citizens and people who reside in Zambia to access these locations and to enjoy the experience of being there, whether it's the flora, the fauna, or just the natural beauty of that environment. And that is the pure purpose of Mangolezya. We have three very distinct values in our mission, and we want to offer clean, comfortable, and affordable holidays. And we stick to that. Everything we do, we visit those three terms. Is it clean? Is it comfortable? And is it affordable? If it's not, then it shouldn't be part of our business operating model.
Okay. And how does the conservation element, because you were talking about how the conservation element, when you have tourists from outside the country, they don't necessarily participate, but when you make it accessible to Zambians, how do they contribute to that?
So what happens is, when you create an enabling environment for people to access these beautiful places, you then create an army of future conservationists. Okay. Because the next time they hear about a beautiful place that they visited being considered for mining, they would be on the bandwagon of, no, we don't want that to happen, because we know that place. We've been there, we've experienced it. And actually, it's really beautiful, and it's part of our heritage. And it's been like that for hundreds of thousands of years, and we don't want to destroy it. Okay. And that is where the conservation element comes in, because if someone doesn't value something, they can't love it. And if they can't love it, they won't conserve it. So we have to create that value. And the value comes with having people experience these amazing places. Okay, right. And what are we saying to people who say, but what is ecotourism? How are we defining that? It's a very broad term, and I would say one that we are learning ourselves. But I mean, wildlife, one aspect is obviously the ability to go and see wildlife. I think that's probably one of the core activities that we offer. Last year at Winterthorn, we had close to 1,800 guests that stayed with us in 1 year. We do a survey for our guests. So every guest that stays, or every group of guests, will fill out a little survey form where we pick information from there. And the majority of those guests have never been to the Lower Zambezi before. They've never seen the Zambezi River before. A lot of them have never seen a hippo before or an elephant, apart from maybe in a zoo or on the TV. So you're taking these elements of wildlife that might be seen as, something that's nice to have, and actually giving someone the experience of taking a photo near it, or, just experiencing that animal. At Winterthorn, we have a hippo that comes every day to eat our lawn. His name is Harry. So the guests at night will be able to see Harry. Those who've stayed at Winterthorn will know Harry very well. He comes up and you can take photos. Obviously, you can't stand with him. He's not a tame animal, but from a distance, you can take a photo of Harry.
Yeah.
And it just builds it creates value for the animal, and therefore a connection is made. And when that connection is made, people will want to conserve.
Okay.
So that's an example. The other element is, obviously, we want to ensure that we do all of our activities and everything that we do around tourism is done in a sustainable way.
Okay.
So, we can't go into areas and build massive structures because those structures will impact the accessibility for the animals to, say, come and drink water. We know there's similar problems in other towns where big structures have been built, and it's affected, the corridors for the elephants. It's now made them, move away from their natural routes into other routes and into sort of human-wildlife conflict zones.
Okay.
So we wouldn't want to do that in those areas. We want to ensure that our footprint is minimal, but still it's comfortable and still it's clean. And even with our structural construction of our camps, we always make sure that we make them as much as possible a home away from home. So we look to build permanent structures that are brick and mortar rather than safari tent, because a lot of our domestic tourists are not keen on sleeping in tents, especially when there's lions around. So we build brick and mortar buildings. And also just create a home environment so that you are not thrown in the deep end when it comes to safari.
So you're
and then we
saying
want to create
budget.
levels.
It's budget friendly.
Yes, exactly.
But okay. So I wanted to come to more specifically adventures that you have undertaken in. So in 2019, you established, I believe it's 2019, Winterthorn Lodge.
Yes.
So obviously there's an incentive for you, apart from the fact that you're passionate about conservation. There's also a financial incentive for you in getting into this as a line of business. What were the toughest operational and financial hurdles you experienced at the time, and how did you navigate them to establish? Because it's a self-catering model, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So I think there are two initial elements when it comes to this sort of business. I think the first one is there's a capital requirement. It's not a service. So you have to invest in property, in construction, in buying boats and vehicles and so on and so forth. So
personnel as
yes,
well. Yeah.
Personnel. So but you need, for me, personally, it's not a business that I ever intended to reap a profit in the early days. It's something that I want to build over a period of time. So I was happy to create long-term business plans that, didn't see return on capital in a short period, but in a much longer period. So by doing that, it put a lot less pressure on the company to perform, of course, because your rates that you're using to return your capital would be quite low. So I'm looking at maybe over 10 or 15 years rather than sort of 3 to 4 years, return on capital. That's the first part. The second part is that we have a model that is affordable, but we also have our guests pay us in advance so that we can facilitate the running of the camp. This has helped us a lot. So we get deposits, and then we obviously are able to then use that cash flow to generate expenses. And then obviously when the guests come on site, they will pay us the balances. And so it's not prepaid per se, but we don't have long payment terms which extend over the period of when you've given the service. And I think that also helps with this.
Stu doesn't tell me though how you started for that initial financial that part, because I can see that working now that you're operational, but before you could establish yourself.
I had to put everything on the line. I had to mortgage my house. I had to do without all manner of nice things that you probably would buy. When you reach a certain age and period in your career. I always say to my partner that we've eaten eggs every day for a long time. And I don't mind eating eggs. Eggs are good protein and they're cheap. And you don't need to spend a lot on them, which means you can spend more on the business. Look, opening a business takes huge amount of effort. And financial effort is part of it. It's very difficult to access funding. Very difficult. And in fact, to be honest, most of the funding that I've ever had to access for this business has come from my own personal ability to borrow money. It's not come from the ability of the company, because the company in itself is too new and the financial institutions just wouldn't really, have an interest in lending money. So I've used my personal name and my personal credit facilities and whatever assets I've had to generate. But we've also been very, very strict with our business model. And we reinvest everything. I mean, we started in 2019. So this is our 6th year, really, because it was right at the end of 2019. And we've never taken any money out. Everything that we've earned, we've always put back in.
And you're expanding at the same time. I mean, so 6 years on, you're looking, because you currently have, is it two camps?
So we Mangolezya Camps and Safaris is the holding company. So that's not a camp. It's just the entity that controls everything. We have Winterthorn in Lower Zambezi, which we opened in 2019. And then we have Raintree, which recently opened. We opened it for a very short period in 2024 because we wanted to test the water. And closed it again, made some changes to our business model and reopened it this year. So those two are running. We have 8 other sites which are under different varies of construction or deployment. We would hope to finish another 2 or 3 this year, so we'd have 5 going into next year, and then over the next couple of years finish the other 5. We're very strategic, so we're looking at we already have Lower Zambezi and Kafue National Park. There's another site in Kafue National Park, but in the northern section. Then we're going up to West Lunga, which is probably one of my favorite national parks. It's near Mfumbwe in Northwestern Province. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's on the Kabompo River. We have a beautiful site there. So that one, I'm hoping we'll open this year. We've got another one on the other side of Lower Zambezi, which is in an area called Luangwa, but not Luangwa National Park, Luangwa Town. So it's near there, near the confluence of the Luangwa and the Zambezi. So this is another site, and then we're under discussions for areas like North Luangwa, which is probably my favorite national park, and literally only has 1 or 2 camps in it. Such a beautiful national park, and the only national park where you'll see the black rhino. North Luangwa and a few other ones that they're not quite ready, so I can't mention them here. But when we're done, there'll be 10.
Okay, so there will be 10 within at least by the time we mark 5 years from now, you'll have 10 camps. So here's a question. I think that's brilliant. It's encouraging, inspiring. But here's a question that I would really like to put to you. what would you either, I mean, we've heard of, in more recent times, we're hearing of Mamfushi, we're hearing of revival safaris, but what do you identify as the primary barriers that prevent more indigenous Zambians from taking active ownership of such roles and, like expansions like you're doing or establishing more of these outlets? And how can we dismantle those barriers in your view?
Absolutely. Musonda's doing an amazing job with Mamfushi.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I love what they're doing. And we need more operators like that in the market, offering that sort of experience for domestic tourists. And he has a lot of international tourists that come through as well. So look, I think first and foremost, this industry, it does require a level of passion, or at least interest. It's a very difficult business to get into if your only purpose is to make money, because there is so much intricacy around the experience that the guests are going to have. But if you do have an interest in wildlife conservation and in tourism in total, and taking people to these beautiful places. And by the way, it's not just national parks. I mean, we have literally 100 waterfalls in the country, apart from Victoria Falls, beautiful waterfalls in Luapula. I mean, I've visited most of them with nothing, no infrastructure, no lodges, no, not even a campsite. We have Lake Mweru. I know a lot of people have been to Bangweru, and it's beautiful. Samfia is wonderful. But for me, Mweru is an even more beautiful lake.
Yeah, honestly, I would imagine that, I mean, we're thinking of even places like Samfia, you will get quite a few indigenous Zambians that run establishments. But I think when it comes to national parks, that's a tough one. Like, genuinely, that's a tough one. And there are definitely barriers. It's not for a lack of passion, I would imagine. I don't think so.
No, absolutely. I'm not saying a lack of passion. I'm saying that's the starting point. If you have the passion, that's a good starting point. I think the second part is it's like a lot of businesses, right? They look difficult from the outside.
Yeah.
But actually they're not that difficult once you get inside, Look, I always encourage my team, and I always encourage the staff, that we have just focus on the experience.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. People don't book accommodation. They don't book a game drive. They book an experience.
Yeah.
They want a nice experience. And that's what you got to focus on. I have zero tolerance to a tap not working. I have zero tolerance to having 10 guests and only 9 workable chairs. For me, that's unacceptable. Unacceptable. And that's where the mindset has to be when you're running this kind of a venture. You have to think from the guest perspective, even from the moment they engage you. There's no point in having a Facebook page for your lodge or your camp, but nobody answers the messages.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 days later, you get back to the client. I mean, I've traveled a lot around the country. I've stayed in all kinds of lodges. And some of them, you get in touch with them on Tuesday, you visit the location on Friday, and the following Wednesday, they're getting back to you to say, oh, this is our pricing, a week later. It's pointless. So it's about the experience. And that's what you have to focus on. If you can give people a really good experience, the experience of how they book with you, how they pay you, payment is really important.
Yeah.
You can't say to someone, oh, you can stay with us in Kafue National Park, but we only take cash. We don't have a POS machine. We don't have mobile money. We don't have any form of Visa online payment.
If you're not taking the convenience of the experience.
Exactly. You're not creating a nice experience. You're creating a horrible experience. You can't build a camp and have a road that is, the saloon car can't travel on, because a lot of people don't have 4x4 vehicles. So you have to think, how is someone going to get from Lusaka to the camp?
Yeah.
What is that drive going to look like? Am I giving them proper directions to the site? Am I ready to come and meet them at the main road if they are driving a small car, and put them in my 4x4 and have their small car parked somewhere and take them in using the 4x4. Those are the thoughts that you have to have. And if you focus on the experience, everything else will work out.
Are you
Everything
mentoring
else will
anyone
work
in
out.
that sense? Are you do you have any mentees that you're speaking to, you're helping with that
I
type of
do.
initiative? Yeah. Yeah.
I do have a couple of mentees. I'm very open. You know, for me, as a conservationist, I would love to see more lodges and more camps. I'd
Yeah.
love to see more areas open up. So if anyone has an interest in this, and
Mhm.
anyone would want more sort of advice from me, I'm happy to give it. I'm happy to give it to anyone, and that's just because I want to see the industry grow. I want to see, especially Zambian citizens, I want to see their participation in this industry, because it's another industry that could pass us by
Yeah.
if we don't participate. You know, if we don't participate. And yes, there are the key barriers around funding and having the need for having funding.
Mm.
But there's a young man that is one of my mentees, and he wanted to build a lodge in Lower Zambezi, but he didn't have a lot of funding. And I said to him, you know what you should do? Rather than building a lodge, why don't you develop a business that provides services and activities for people who are already stationed down there?
Yeah.
Because then you don't need a physical location. You can just organize a boat, or you can organize a car, which is going to cost you a lot less than, than building the lodge.
Mhm.
And then, we build a brand, you build your name up, and you become someone that takes people on game drives or takes people fishing or whatever it might be, because you're part of that ecosystem. The reason that Livingston works so well compared to other areas of the country is because it's a tourism ecosystem. You have a
Mhm.
multitude of different types of service providers,
Yeah.
all working in an ecosystem to provide an experience for the tourist. The moment you leave Livingston, everything is centralized to that company. You go to
Mm.
Kafue National Park, and the person you're staying with will do everything. You'll not hear of another provider coming in to give you your game drive or your boat cruise or
It
anything
will be
else.
the
So
one lodge doing everything.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. So if you can tap in now, we've got 42 lodges in Lower Zambezi registered.
Okay.
Not every lodge has a boat. Not every lodge has a game vehicle. Some of them don't. So if someone comes in and does a deal with a lodge and says, when you have guests or you have overflow of guests, my boat is available to take people fishing, and then you do a commission or a partnership or whatever it might be. That's a softer way to get into the industry than trying to find X number of kwacha to build a
Right. So
lodge,
there are
which
quite
is
a
which
few
is going to be a
entry
lot more.
points then. Yeah, there are quite a few entry points that don't necessarily
You know,
need heavy capital.
absolutely. There,
Right.
there's a lad in Lower Zambezi who started doing village walks. I
Right.
don't think he's had to invest very much money in that, right?
Mhm.
He's just made an arrangement with the local community that he's going to be bringing people to the village to see
Yeah.
ABCD, and
And
there's
you
a
say
there's a
this,
profit share arrangement.
you say this with the conviction that these ventures are scalable, right? Because you're not saying,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
No,
I
but
need to ask you
with
another question
anything,
before we go to the audience one. So again,
no problem.
we have asked that people leave us some comments in the chat or questions, contributions, or if you'd really like to speak, you could raise your digital hand. But let's stay with the idea of the industry itself. And I wondered what your thoughts were on with many tourism operators securing expansive management agreements, such as those in the Kafue National Park, that's current. How do you view the pros and cons of these large concessions, and what safeguards ensure communities aren't marginalized in the process?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think we needed a partner in Kafue National Park. We needed Africa Parks to come in.
Yeah.
They're not generating enough revenue from that park. A lot of people think park entries are expensive. The Kafue National Park is about 44 kwacha a day to
Okay.
enter the park as a citizen.
Mhm.
It's not a lot of money. Like it's not thousands of kwacha. It's 44 kwacha for you to enter the park. Of course, tourists will pay more depending on whether they are local, foreigners living in Zambia or what they call foreign tourists.
Yeah.
So the park is not generating enough money, and conservation is expensive. And you need a partner like that because they do come with funding, and they will put in place financial support and muscle that can help you to sustain the park. And
Right.
if you sustain the park, you obviously improve the park. And if you improve the park, you should then improve the number of visitors. So it is difficult, but I think partners like that are okay. I think they come in and they help us to make the park a better place to visit.
Right.
They improve the quality of the wildlife. Yes, they might have a slightly different way of doing things, but you know, as us, as Mangolezya and even as Raintree Camp, which is in Kafue National Park, we actually built outside the park. We built in
Okay.
what's called the game management area.
Yeah.
And we just visit the park for our game drives. And the reason we did that is twofold. One, because we want to make I want to make our lodge really accessible. I want the journey of the customer coming from their home to the lodge as quick and as easy as possible. And then once they're in the lodge, we can then obviously put them into our game vehicles, which are 4x4, and take them over the more rugged terrain. So that's one reason that we do that. The second reason is that the costs associated with running that kind of lodge in terms of the fees are going to be a lot less than in the park, which means that we won't have to onward charge those additional fees that you would get if you slept inside the park. So that model works really well for us and for the market that we are sort of working with. Yeah.
It was so you're pro it basically. You that model is suitable for your business.
No, that's for those who are helping us in the parks. I think outside of the parks, I think we need to be cautious there. If it's private land, you see, these are national parks and these are agreements to help run the park. And it's a contract. Yes, it has a tenure, but it's still just a contract.
Right.
Some of these other entities are privately owned, large spans of land, which then go into land title. I think those, yes, we need to be cautious because are we displacing local communities? Are we displacing people that live in the area? Are we creating, a problem for the future, which we also have to consider as well? A lot of landmass is already designated for national parks. I don't think we need to build any more national parks. We do have enough. What we need to do is improve the ones we have in a number of different ways. So outside of the parks, I'm very cautious about those, especially when they're large pieces of land that go into private hands.
Okay, thanks. I'll take a question now from Jonathan in the chat. Jonathan asks, well, he says, thanks for sharing your story, but he asks, I have one question. What has been your biggest fear as far as business is concerned since you started operating?
Oof. It's a good question. Yeah, it's a very good question. Look, I constantly fear the more that we grow, the bigger our liabilities become in terms of the more exposed we become financially, of course, because there's a lot more that we're trying to do. So you want to make sure your fear is that will the business grow at the same rate that you're expanding. I love a lot of the sites that I wouldn't choose them, but will our customers love those sites and will they travel to them as well? Because some of them are far away from the capital cities or the provincial capitals where most of the money sits. So I think that's probably the one fear.
Yeah.
The other fear is obviously that we're not able to evangelize our message. Our message is very clear. We want to open up these areas for Zambians.
Yeah.
We want to take Zambian people into these beautiful areas and not let it be something that feels like it's for foreign tourists only. So the fear is that how do we evangelize that quickly and get everybody to know that?
Okay. How do you think the trajectory on that has shifted a little bit since the pandemic? Like more local tourism is taking place, more consumption of this sector is taking place amongst locals.
Yeah, I think it perpetuates positivity, right? Because if you go and you stay locally and you have a great time, you're going to tell people that you had a great time. If you don't do that, then obviously it perpetuates a negative environment. So we have to be sure that every guest that comes to stay with us has a good experience because they become our salespeople when they come back to wherever they live and talk to their friends and their relatives. They become our chief sales officers. So I think the pandemic gave us an opportunity. We did have a lot of business during the pandemic. I think, especially because we did an exclusive offering where we said one family at a time or one group at a time, so that you were in line with COVID regulations, etc. But since then, it's been about ensuring that people have a lovely experience, that they come back and they evangelize that they had a great experience with us.
Brilliant, thank you. We're still taking questions. So Jesse has a question in the chat. What is your view on the commercialization of heritage sites? For example, hot springs, waterfalls, etc. And how can we ensure we preserve the local customs? So that's Jesse Nyirenda asking.
That's a very good question, Jesse. I think it's very similar to what we said about the national parks. I know Heritage have done a lot of advertisements for heritage sites. I know the director there, and they get very little response. And they maybe they put them in the wrong place. They put them in the paper and so on. Multitude of heritage sites around the country, asking people to send proposals, and nobody does. Now, the hot springs that's in before Rufunza in Chongwe, or is it in Rufunza? I think it's in that direction. Has been offered before, and people have not picked up on it, or should I say, Indigenous or citizens have not picked up on that opportunity. But we have to find a way to commercialize our heritage sites without destroying them. We have to find a way because we have to generate revenue for their upkeep. We have so many challenges as a nation. We can't afford to spend money on keeping up our heritage sites and our natural sites and our flora and our fauna, because that money is going to other areas which are vital, like health and education. So we have to find a way to generate income from those sites sustainably.
Right.
So I think I am for it, but we just have to make sure that we do it in a sustainable way, and we do it in a way that ensures that the best interest of us as a nation is always kept to hand.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Hope that was satisfactory. Any further questions from anyone, or be taking questions? You can put your digital hand up, or you can type in the chat. In case you're just joining us, we're speaking to Mark Townsend of Mangolezya Safaris and Camps. Mark, let's speak about Sioonga. That's a place of my childhood holidays. But I think one thing that's apparent is that unlike neighboring markets, it has seen relatively limited tourism infrastructure. What do you see as the key constraints there, and what targeted interventions could unlock its potential, not just for ecotourism, but just leisure tourism as well?
No, absolutely. I know Sioonga well. I grew up in Sioonga. My dad had a hotel there, so Lake Kariba Inns.
And that was
So
my childhood holiday place. Yeah.
So I do know Sioonga very well. Look, I think the biggest challenge, and I see this in a lot of areas, it's not just in Sioonga, is we haven't either adhered to or implemented efficient and sustainable land zoning. We've allowed the mixed zoning of areas. I mean, if you go to Sioonga, yes, it's a town, and that's fine. You need to have the requirements of the town in a certain point, and then you have the leisure side or the tourism side. But we've kind of allowed the two to blur into one, and you find medium density to high density areas right up in the middle of the tourism areas, and that ineffective zoning is what has caused the challenge in Sioonga, and why it looks like a bit of a mismatch of an area. If you go to Kariba on the Zimbabwe side, they're very strict with land zoning.
Yeah.
They have the tourism part and they have the town part, and they're very separate. And you can't build a house in the tourism side and vice versa. And I think that's a lesson we need to have for all of our areas that we want to keep for tourism and for hospitality. We have to make sure that we have very adequate and we adhere to efficient and sustainable land zoning. And if you look at new areas, the lake is big. Sioonga is one part, but you've got Sinazeze, Sinazongwe, and other areas. The same thing has to happen in those areas because there are opportunities to generate tourism in those areas. The same with Bangweru, same with Mweru, the same with the waterfalls, the same with all these sites. We have to have very strict and adherence to planning and to land zoning.
Right. So now that you've told me your personal family interest in the area, is your family doing anything about it?
No, unfortunately, my side of the family is no longer part of the Sioonga enclave. But yeah, I think, look, I feel sad sometimes when I go to Sioonga because I see what it could have been from when I was young to what it is now. It's a real missed opportunity, to be honest with you. It's a missed opportunity. And I think we just have to make sure we don't have that same missed opportunity. If you look at our game parks, they're surrounded by game management areas.
Yeah.
Game management areas are a little bit different to game parks. They are not land that is under national parks. It is essentially customary land. It is under the royal establishments of those areas. But DMPW, Departments of National Parks, also have a say. And I think between the royal establishment and DMPW, we have to make sure that those GMAs are managed correctly. The zoning and the game and the management plans are done.
Who is we? Where does the responsibility lie? Like, is there someone taking ownership of all these ideas?
Yeah, look, I think the Ministry of Tourism is at the center of all of it.
Okay.
And we do have a new Wildlife Act, which is coming out very soon. And in that Wildlife Act, there's a lot more clarity around this particular aspect. There's a lot more ownership for community resource boards as well within those environments to ensure that whatever developments happen in those areas, there is an essence of support for communities. And I think it's one area that we haven't discussed now, but it's a really important area, is how do we ensure that the communities that live in the boundaries or the exteriors of the national parks benefit from tourism and benefit from the investment in the area. Because as we build more lodges and as we develop these areas, there is potential for human wildlife conflict, where agriculture is also expanding and sometimes expanding into GMAs. that also creates a challenge around human-wildlife conflict, especially with elephants. Now, this time of the year is when you start to see those challenges, because the elephants will leave the park and look for fresh maize to eat. So, a lot of work has to be done in those areas as well.
I would like actually to spend a bit more time talking about that, about human wildlife conflict, but also about how the community benefits from it. But I've got a question from Xavier Mwambwa, who's on the call. Xavier, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tandy. Hi, Mark. Of course, Mark and I know each other. So, Mark, thanks very much for all that you're doing. This is what I said in the chat, because I didn't know if I was going to get a chance for what you're doing to really tell your story, but also the other things you're doing that others may not know in terms of you trying to champion the local tourism spaces. I think it's very important. So my question for you is, is there scope, are you looking to expand? Is there scope for other Zambians, both Zambians at home and those of us in the diaspora, who don't know anything about tourism, don't have the skills and the expertise, but who may be interested in investing, putting in money, so that you can do more of what you're suggesting and bring these ideas to more people in Zambia and expand? And if the answer is yes, what can they do? Should they just get in touch? And some of us are very good with coordinating together in the diaspora, and maybe there's a way that you can have some partnerships.
I think that's a great question, Xavier. Thank you. There's definitely an opportunity. There's definitely an opportunity. I think one of the key areas that we've worked on over the past few years is perfecting our operating model, which is very unique. It's a bit different to the conventional safari operating model that's out there. And by perfecting it, we've been able to collect a lot of data that allows us to have that conversation with potential investors. I think we need to create, obviously, opportunity for investors to come in. But when I look at the country as a whole, and I look at how much potential there is, it's not something that Mangolezya Camps and Safaris would be able to do on its own. And as I mentioned earlier in the call, we need more participation in the industry. We need more people, especially around domestic tourism. We need more participation. So I'm happy to share my thoughts on that, and if it's to create another vehicle that would look at investing and sort of accelerating the process. As mentioned, we have a very good operating model that we've managed to perfect now, that we feel we can roll out. We're using a lot of technology in what we're doing as well, which helps for us to collect that data. So there's definitely an opportunity there. And the other point is, we have to look at this from the perspective of the consumer. People want to have wonderful experiences. I mean, a lot of people strive and desire wonderful experiences, and we have those opportunities to deliver wonderful experiences right here on our doorstep, very close to where people live, within driving distance. So definitely the opportunity exists. Definitely we can talk about scaling it up, investment, etc. Absolutely. But more importantly, I think we need more citizen participation. Absolutely. It's as I mentioned earlier, some national parks don't even have one lodge in them. They literally don't have any. Imagine a national park with no lodges. And government has to keep funding the protection of that park when they're not getting any money in return. So you can see where that challenge comes from when you look at that.
Xavier, I hope that satisfies that response. Jessie, did you want to come in and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
I think mine is mostly skewed towards preservation of our culture yet again. Most of us who live in Lusaka and other urban areas do not have that link or contact to where we're coming from. So I remember in the 80s when I was young, we used to go to the local market in Chilenge, and they would have at the town hall like dance troupes, performing and doing sketches, traditional dances and so on. And I believed at the time that they were supported by the local authority or the council in that area, but we don't see that anymore. And my concern is that if we're sort of like losing touch with that side of our history, our background. So I wanted to pick your brain in terms of, do you feel that there is limited political will, like from particularly the local government authority? And do you believe that this would actually enhance further local tourism? And how can we tap into that? I just wanted to pick your brain on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great question. And I would align it to my purpose in conservation and wildlife. Someone can have a purpose to want to conserve and retain culture. It's a very similar thought process. You want to preserve that culture, you want to enhance it, you want people to experience it, you want people to fall in love with it. I just have to look at the traditional ceremonies. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I do attend some really small ones, especially in areas where we operate, in the northwestern. A couple up there. There's Tonga, which is happening, Chief Chisela's next month. Senior Chief Kasempa, they'll have theirs next month as well. So these are real opportunities for people who live in towns that maybe don't experience that sort of thing to go and experience that kind of cultural engagement. So absolutely. And why not? Why not come up with a business model that the purpose of that business is to take people out of the cities so they can go and experience culture, or they can go experience heritage. And if it's not out of the cities, then bringing some of that culture or heritage into the city for them to experience. I think for the question around political will, to be honest with you, I kind of just put that on the back burner, because for me, I always say to people, if we're going to wait for someone in government to do it for us, we might wait forever. So we just got to get on with it. Come up with a plan and get on with it. The opportunity exists. If you feel that there are people that would want to experience that, and tourism is an experience. That's all it is. It's an experience. It's a feeling you feel. Happy feeling, sad feeling. I mean, there's some tourism which is a sad feeling, right? There's a joyous feeling, all these different feelings. It's experiences, and what you want to give people is an experience, and that's where they see the value. They don't see the value in. I mean, you can build $1 million hotel and have tiny rooms with horrible mattresses, and they will have a terrible experience, and you would have wasted $1 million. You can spend $50,000 and have a huge bed with a beautiful mattress and a view of the river, and they will have an amazing experience, and you've spent only $50,000 to give them that experience. So that's how you've got to think about it. It's about the experience. So if you can find a way to tap into that culture and either take people to it so they experience it, but you got to think about everything. You got to think about, how do we transport people there? Where will they stay? What will they eat? Will they be able to have a shower in hot water? Will they be able to charge their phone? All these small little things that add or take away from the experience. So absolutely opportunities there.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for that question as well, Jesse. Let's talk a bit more about measuring success in this case. And maybe this is also an opportunity for you to bring back the community question, or community benefits question. So I was wondering what matrix you use to track to assess rather financial health, community well-being, and conservation outcomes? How do you balance those?
Yeah, I think understanding the needs of the communities are very important. They'll be very different to you know, what the business's needs are, what the business's purpose are. But it doesn't mean that one can't benefit the other. Absolutely. Everywhere that we operate, we try to engage very closely with the Royal Establishment and the CRB, which is the Community Resource Board, and then the community that's very close to us. How can we do that? I think something I haven't mentioned, which is really important to me, and I cannot stress this any, harder. Good people are really important when it comes to running a business. You've got to have good people. When I say good people, I mean people with the share in your passion, that share in what you want to do, share in the vision of the company, are willing to go that extra mile. And then you also need to reward them for that. You can't take advantage of that. You need to reward them. And then whether your rewarding is short-term or long-term, that's okay. But you need to be honest with them about where the business is and where the business is going. And one of the areas that we really focus on is developing individuals from the communities that we work in to work with us. Whether that's developing them into safari guides, whether that's developing them into coxswains for the boats, chefs. In Raintree, we have a young lad who's from that area who's training to be a chef. So we do have our chef and we have the trainee chef, and they're kind of working hand. And then we believe that over 2 or 3 years, he will be able to leave that site and go be head chef in one of the new camps. So it's an opportunity for them to grow. Not to be a partner. To be a partner, we actually have a couple of community development partnerships that we're talking about now. There's actually some community camps which have been built in a couple of locations, and these are built through partners, but mostly run through the CRBs, and they've kind of got into a challenge where they're not really able to run those sites very well. They have challenges around marketing, and they have challenges around some of the areas that we can help them in. So we're looking to maybe partner with them. We're Mangolezya Camps and Safaris, because we've built this operating model. We take over the running of the camp, not the ownership. We take over the running of the camp, and then we come up with a profit sharing agreement with the community. And obviously, both sets of shareholders in that sense of the joint venture would make money going forward. So that's definitely something that's possible for us.
Yeah.
And
I've got 2 minutes. So what I'll do is, Jonathan, I have seen your question. I'll pass it on to Mike, and then I'll email the response back to you. But I do have a key question that I would like to ask. Tell me what the next 5 years looks like for Mangolezya, and what's exciting you about it. And then on the back of that, if you had agency, either as a president or somebody with power in Zambia, for just 30 minutes, what would you put in place to advance entrepreneurship?
Okay. The next 5 years, we want to expand. And we want to expand. We want to take our business model and we want to expand it. And we want to open up new sites and new areas. And we want to continue to take people for these beautiful, wonderful experiences. And we measure every guest that comes with us, does a survey, and we collect that data, and we use that data to improve every single guest experience. And we want to continue to do that. We want to continue to put our guests' experience at the top end of everything that we do. It's all about that. Because I know if we do that well, everything else will fall into place. So the next 5 years about expansion. We want the next 10 camps to be opened, and other ventures that we're getting into. We have some other stuff that we're doing as well that we'll be launching that's outside of the camps, but also to enhance tourism in Zambia. So you'll be soon to see those other initiatives that we're being part of. Remind me the second question. You said I've had 30 minutes?
If you had 30 minutes as either president or somebody with power and agency, what would you put in place in Zambia to advance entrepreneurship?
Oh, that's a good question. Just 30 minutes.
Just 30
Look,
minutes.
I think for me, the most important thing about entrepreneurship is belief. We need people to understand that they can actually do it. I have one of my favorite sayings is fortune favors the brave, and you need to be brave. And I have failed so many times. I have made so many mistakes. Even in Mangolezya, I've made a lot of mistakes, costly mistakes, costly mistakes. But it's okay. It's okay to make those mistakes. And I think we need Zamims are very smart. They are very, very dedicated to what they want to do. They put in massive effort. So they need to believe that they can do it and just get on and do it. Whatever you want to do, just do it. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay. Try again. We must move away from this feeling of failure is a bad thing. Failure is actually a really good thing. Mm-hmm. And the other point I want to make, and I think this is important when I always have this conversation with people, look, I left school at 16. I don't have A-levels. I don't have a degree. It's just not me. I don't like reading. I'm just not an academic person, unfortunately. So there's nothing stopping you from going out there and developing a business and being successful at that business. Even if you haven't finished school, even if you haven't got your A-levels or your degree, there's nothing stopping you from doing it. It's just down to you and your belief and your willingness to take some risk. You have to take some risk, serious risk. There's been times for me where I literally have got like 5 kwacha left. Yeah. And I've got 20 days left in the month. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And it's okay to be in that position because you know that every effort you're putting in will eventually pay you back, because it's either going to teach you better or it's going to give you the fruit of your work. Those are the only two things that ever happen when you put yourself forward and put effort in.
So in a few minutes for me, period, you would give us the power
create belief,
to be brave.
Create belief. No, give people belief. Give people the belief that they can do it. Right. And stop telling people that they can't do it, because they can do it. And everyone who's listening here, you can do it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. That's real passion there, taken to profit. And we really appreciate you joining us and taking time, but also very, very many thanks to everybody who registered for this and joined us today. We've really appreciated. So this was From Passion to Profit, Charting a Sustainable Tourism Enterprise with Mark Townsend. Thank you, Mark. And good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.